Howdy, folks. Time for another K-Dog movie of the week. Now, I know I haven't been posting for the past month or so, but just some crazy things have been going on. Plus, I decided to take a little break from that. But hey, I'm back. So we're gonna go on this because there's a lot of movies I could talk about, And I don't know why I decided to step away, just take a break from it from a little while. But I think one of the last times, it was not too long ago, I did a whole review of my favorite movie of all time, E.T. Well, this one is kind of a counterpart to E.T. This actually predates E.T. and it is another Speiberg classic. How about Close Encounters of the Third Kind? Let's roll the trailer.
Close Encounters of the First Kind. Sighting of an unidentified flying object. Close Encounters of the Second Kind. Physical evidence of a UFO. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Actual contact. Columbia Pictures, in association with EMI, presents Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The director is Steven Spielberg, whose most recent motion picture, Jaws, is already a legend. The producers are Julia Phillips and Michael Phillips, of The Sting and Taxi Driver. Creating special effects is Douglas Trumbull, who in this film goes far beyond his achievements in 2001: A Space Odyssey. For the music, there was only one choice: 11-time Academy Award nominee John Williams, composer of the scores for Jaws and Star Wars. The technical advisor is the world's foremost authority on unidentified flying objects, Dr. J. Allen Hynek of Northwestern University. Heading the cast is Richard Dreyfuss, who has shown his rare talent in such diverse films as American Graffiti, The Apprenticeship of Duty Kravitz, and Jaws. And making his American debut as an actor is the great French director François Truffaut, winner of the 1974 Academy Award. A close encounter could happen to anyone. It could happen to you. It does happen to Roy Neary. An average working man, Neary finds his life, his very world, changed.
Who are you people? We have very little time, Mr. Neary. We need answers from you. They're honest, direct, and to the point.
Who are you
N'avez-vous
people?
pas fait récemment une rencontre?
Have you recently had a close encounter?
I want to speak to someone in charge.
Une rencontre plutôt inhabituelle?
I want to lodge a complaint.
A close encounter with something very unusual.
What the hell is going on around here? Who the hell are you people?
The title of the picture, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, refers to an intriguing possibility.
Well, a close encounter of the first kind is one is close, but nothing really happens.
Close encounter of the first kind is visible contact with a UFO.
Forget the shape and forget how fast it's going. It's something that you just can't explain.
Close encounters of the second kind are those which leave a physical trace. Holes in the ground,
Fern rings,
broken tree branches,
telephone lines down,
animals disturbed.
the stopping of car engines.
Then the close encounters of the third kind are the most interesting of all.
Close encounter of the third kind is really when you meet them.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The experience of an ordinary man, shared by people from all over the world, irresistibly drawn by a compulsion they don't understand, to witness the most dramatic event in the history of the human race. And what you will see has never been seen before. It begins in an Indiana town and leads to one inescapable conclusion.
Yeah, this week's movie of the week is Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Like I said, if you enjoyed E.T., this movie is a good comparison because this actually predates E.T. and it actually helped kind of spark what E.T. was to be. I'll talk more about that later. Very good movie for its time. This was released in 1977 during Christmas of 1977. It was originally supposed to come out in 1978, but the studio Columbia Pictures had wanted to push the movie up because they were having some financial trouble, and they knew they had a hit on their hands with this, and so they rushed Spielberg into releasing the film of Christmas of 77. So that explains why there's 3 different versions of this movie. More on that later. So I'll come to what the whole plot of the story is. The whole movie takes place throughout the United States, or actually the whole world, actually. I should clarify that. But it's about this guy by the name of Roy Neary, who's played by Richard Dreyfuss. And he, on one night, some crazy things are happening in his neighborhood of Muncie, Indiana, not too far from where I live. But they're experiencing some chaotic problems going on throughout the city of Muncie. And he's a lineman, so he works on the power lines and things like that. So he's called to go check out what's going on. And during that, while driving out in the middle of the country roads, he experiences a sighting of an unidentified flying object, and it kind of terrifies him. It makes the things in his truck just float and just makes his truck go chaos, and that intrigues him. And of course, that leads to more sightings and so forth. And he ends up abandoning his family, house, and home to go investigate: is there life beyond this planet? Is there, what is it that he's supposed to find out? And he ends up leaving the planet Earth to go live with a race of extraterrestrials. I know that sounds kind of silly, but there's some other things going. It's actually really a decent movie. If it's a decent sci-fi fantasy. I would classify this as sci-fi fantasy. There is some thrilling moments in it that get a little intense in this movie. And like I said, it's a good precursor to E.T. and the whole story. I would say E.T. is more for the kids, while Close Encounters is for the adults who are still children at heart. That's the best way to describe it. And Spielberg himself said that it was science speculation, not science fiction. Because when he was younger, he really was in the whole UFO phenomenon, and but what made him turn away from that belief, and it was the camcorder craze where it just became all the time, and he goes, no, it's not possible. There's no way that we could have been experiencing extraterrestrials. But also in the movie, they talk about what close encounter means. Close encounter of the first kind, obviously, is where you just see a UFO. A close encounter of the second kind is where there's actual traces left, like say like a crop circle, or a burn, or just things just disrupted and things like that. And then of course the third being contact. And the whole movie is building up to the close encounter of the third kind, which is where they actually make contact with the extraterrestrials. And the whole movie, again, builds up to that. And the film... Sorry, I heard a noise. And the whole film is kind of a lengthy film, but it has this great big payoff at the end of the movie, because all the questions that you're asking while watching this movie ends up getting answered. Like what? Because there's several mysteries that take place in the film. And when the film opens up in Mexico, where these scientists are gathered because they've experienced an unusual case that's happened just, right in the middle of the Mexican desert. And of course the Mexican police are there, and they end up meeting up with the French scientist, played by legendary director Francois Truffaut, and they go and investigate that there's been some because they all of a sudden see some World War II planes dropped off in the middle of the desert. And what's strange about it is that the planes are in brand new condition. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, didn't they just rebuild the planes or what have you? No. The planes were dropped off from back in they were picked up from the 1940s, dropped off in the 1970s. And they never aged. And later on, we meet this young woman and her young son, and Roy Neary ends up developing a relationship with them. More particularly the mother. He ends up leaving his family because his wife thinks he's gone crazy, and she goes crazy, just trying to, talk him out of it. You didn't see anything. It was just your imagination, blah, 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 blah. And then finally she just explodes and says, I can't take this. She ends up leaving him to deal with his insanity, so to speak. And of course the young woman and the little boy, he senses all the connections, that he senses everything, and he takes off in the middle of the night when he's supposed to be asleep. He's running out in the forest. At the midway point, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the film, he's abducted himself, and you see what happens during the whole abduction. The house goes nuts, and it scares his mother. It's probably one of the most intense scenes of the movie. It can be, and to me, it could probably be a little frightening, but if you were a younger viewer, but the movie's only rated PG, so I wouldn't take too much of an issue. If it came out today, it would probably be a PG-13. And the fast forward, they end up meeting in Wyoming at Devil's Tower, which is an actual national monument. Right behind it, that there's an aircraft carrier for UFOs. But then but they do set up an aircraft carrier for like a landing site for them. And at the end, they have this communication through lights, colors, and music. And then at the end, you see the World War II pilots come out, you see the little boy come out, and Roy Neary, played by Richard Dreyfuss, walks into the ship and is never seen again. So, yeah. So now, I think it's a great movie, a classic science fiction movie, great sci-fi fantasy. Do check it out. However, now for the Blu-ray review of this movie. This is the version that you want to have, in all honesty. They did put out a DVD counterpart to this, but I would strongly recommend getting this over the DVD counterpart. Because the DVD, which I also had the DVD version of this, the 30th Anniversary Ultimate Edition, to give the correct title. And the whole thing came on 3 discs, because there's 3 different versions of the movie. And now this is where I start talking about things to come later. A little bit of backstory here, why there are 3 cuts to this movie. Well, back in 1977, Columbia Pictures was having some financial trouble. And they knew they had a hit on their hands with Close Encounters because of Steven Spielberg. You know, they had confidence in him that he made Jaws. But the problem was Spielberg at the time liked to go over budget and over schedule. And so he was pressured by Columbia Pictures, please complete the movie by such and such time. And obviously, we want to make the picture out, have the picture out by Christmas, so we can make our money, and so forth. And but Spielberg said, "Well, I haven't completed my movie. There's a lot of things I still want to put into it." And they said, "Well, we have to have the film out by such. You have to make Christmas. You have to have the film out by Christmas, otherwise, we're sunk." So, to make a long story short, Spielberg released the movie by Christmas. Not having the film cut the way he wanted, not having certain scenes that he wanted in it. So, the theatrical cut was released in 1977, running at 135 minutes. Then a few years later, after the film's release, in 1980, Spielberg had some time off after 1941, which was a complete disaster. Spielberg said, "Well, I have some time off. I really would like to go back and re-release Close Encounters and make it closer to the way I wanted it." So he went to Columbia Pictures about that, and they said, let's see. Make more money on a successfully hit movie? And that's the other thing. I forgot to mention that it was a successful hit, that it did get Columbia Pictures out of bankruptcy. And that they wanted to make more money off Close Encounters. So, in 1980, Spielberg released the special edition cut. However, it's not as close to Spielberg's vision as he would have wanted it, because Spielberg says in this Blu-ray that he had to make a little pact with the devil, so to speak, that the Columbia Pictures at the time, they said, "Okay, we'll give you the money to shoot it the way you wanted it to be released, but there's one thing. You've got to show the inside of the mothership." And Spielberg reluctantly said yes to that, because they would not give him the money if he didn't shoot it. So they added, in the 1980 special edition cut, inside the spaceship. And that aggravated him for several years, until 1997 he came out with the director's cut, which is the longest of all 3 cuts. The special edition is the shortest cut, running at 132 minutes. The director's cut runs at 137 minutes, which incorporates some scenes from the theatrical release and the special edition release, and cutting out 2 big scenes from the theatrical version and the inside the mothership shot from the special edition. Now, the way I mean by the 2 scenes from the theatrical cut is there's a couple scenes involving Roy. We see Roy at the factory or at the plant, the power plant, being sent out on the case. But in the special edition and the director's cut, that scene was cut and the dialogue was changed on the telephone. And so the dialogue was changed on the telephone to say, "Hey Roy, we need you to get in your truck, we need to go out." So they completely changed that scene entirely. And the other scene that was cut from the theatrical version was the scene where Roy runs into a couple guards. And one of the guards was Carl Weathers from the Rocky movies, Apollo Creed. So those scenes were cut. Now, one more thing before we get into the contents of this set. One of the things I said this movie was a great counterpart to E.T. Well, there's actually a connection. E.T. originally was designed to be Close Encounters' sequel, believe it or not, because at the tail end of the movie, spoiler alert, there is an alien that walks out and does a hand signal thing with Francois Truffaut, and then turns around, walks right back up the ship, and takes off. Now, that sparked Spielberg to say, what if that alien had stayed behind as an ambassador between the United States government and this extraterrestrial government? And he said, what if that creature had stayed behind and just became a good friend ambassador between them and the aliens? Well, then that eventually changed. That also was incorporated into a parent's divorce, and also return and missing home, wanting to get back home. So eventually it did kind of E.T. kind of came out of Close Encounters a little bit. And Spielberg talks about that in the Blu-ray set of the 30 years anniversary thing. He does a look back 30 years of Close Encounters. So let's take a look at inside the set. Now, this is the version you want to have of this Blu-ray. Obviously, they've come down with a more condensed version of this, where it doesn't have the sleek cover to this. I would try to stay away from the DVD version because of just pure shelf space. It does kind of have a more cool, I think, kind of a cool design on it, where it has the Devil's Tower and the launch pad or whatever it is, the tarmac or whatever, where they had the final scene at the end. And it was a huge box, and it had a digipack in it, and it had the 3 different cuts spread over 3 DVDs. And another thing was the special making of featurette was, our special making of feature was split up into 3 featurettes that were about 15 minutes long, 15 minutes to a half hour long in length, while on the Blu-ray you get all that plus more. Plus you get the full documentary uncut, where it doesn't break up. So it just goes for, it's a whole, I think it's around 90 minutes, the whole making of documentary. Plus, you have all 3 cuts on one disc. How cool is that? So, let's take a look at some of the goodies that's in this set. First of all, let's take a look at the box. It's just a nice little sturdy cardboard box. Just that, and it doesn't catch on anything when you slip it in. However, I did keep the sheet on the back here. It's kind of wrinkled up a little bit, but it just has a shot of the scientists looking at the ETs at the end of the spaceship. Okay. Now, obviously this package doesn't come with a digibook form, but however, it does have like a digibook booklet inside with some pictures and a little bit of trivia. Not too much, I mean, because here's one of the disappointing things about it. Behind the scenes, an insider's look at the making of the film. And it's just pictures from on set. It does have one thing about Devil's Tower in here, but yeah. And actually, here's the picture that's on the DVD set, but it's in a big box. Now we get into the actual content. Well, first of all, before we get into the contents, we have in the sleeve here a reprint of the original theatrical poster, which was designed by Ralph McQuarrie. How cool is that? Now, remember what I said about the movie having 3 different cuts and all the changes that's made? Well, if we tip it on the back, we have this road map explaining each specific different change. And it explains what is taken out. It explains what has been altered. Because not only is there cut scenes, but there's alternate versions of scenes between the original theatrical cut and the director's cut and special edition, blah, and all that. Now, finally, here's the digibook, or the digipack. And of course, this is the scene where the little boy's getting abducted, and this is the portion where he opens up the door and looks outside to the glowing lights. And on the back here, we got the scientist with some bright lights, probably spaceships coming down. And then we open it up, we see a picture of Richard Dreyfuss as Roy Neary looking up at the UFO. And we see that this is a two disc set, while the DVD set is a 3-disc set, having the 3 different cuts spread out on 3 different discs. While this has 2 discs, with the first disc having all 3 cuts on 1 disc, and you can access each different cut using the seamless branching feature on your Blu-ray player. And of course it also has the special features disc, which has the documentaries and a 30-year. There's like some production photos, concept art, you name it, it's on there. Now, if we pull the discs out, we see the entire scene from the movie where the UFOs are coming in, and Devil's Tower, and the little launch pad thing back in the background. So yeah, now we gotta put all the toys back into their places here. You know, and this is a neat little set to have, because if you like the movie, it's a classic 70s sci-fi movie. I'm already. We'll take a look at some of the features it has on here. It says Steven's special features: Steven Spielberg, 30 years of Close Encounters, storyboard to scene comparison, extensive photo galleries, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, making of documentary, the 1977 featurette, Watch the Skies, which it's called Watch the Skies from 1977. Deleted scenes, Blu-ray exclusive in-movie, A View from Above, editor's fact track, and A View from Above feature comparison poster. Now, what that is, I just showed you the poster on the back, had the reprint of the original poster, but it had the roadmap and all that showing the different cuts. Well, also on the Blu-ray, using seamless branching again, it has a fact track that you can turn on, and it depends on which version you're watching. That roadmap will kind of pop up as a pop-up text and explain the different changes as you're watching the movie. You don't have to pull the poster out, so you can set that to what this pop up when the screen comes on. So yeah, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the 30th anniversary Ultimate Edition. That's the version to have. I did have the DVD set, but I traded it in for a Best Buy upgrade and save to get the Blu-ray version, because I still had a DVD player at the time, and so I settled for the DVDs. Also, I forgot to mention that this is also a great demo disc for the Blu-ray. Believe me, because the picture quality is amazing. It's because it just reminds you that this movie was shot on film. All the effects was done on film. And this is a really grainy movie, the way you kind of want movies to be, because if it's shot on film, it needs to have film grain, so you want that. Another thing is the audio. This is a good disc to demo different types of audio, because it has both Dolby True HD and DTS soundtracks on here. So you can do a proper comparison of what each sound system sounds like, and you can make your own judgment of what's better. But yeah, it has both Dolby True HD and DTS HD Master Audio on it. So yeah, really great set. So I wish more sets would be like this. But yeah, great movie, great set. Check it out for yourself. Close Encounters, this week's movie of the week. Don't know what I'm going to talk about next week. I'm probably thinking about another classic. So, from me to you, see you later.